tonight. This is my second interview tonight. This is COFOH Live Undead. I am your host, Daniel Crosier, and I am joined by the amazing Christopher Mihm.
You write something on my face.
Christopher, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
I'm from Minnesota, so that's as good as it gets. You know, you can't be over the top, so it's got to always be super chill. You know, Midwestern, just like, well, I'm not dead, so that's good. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, Christopher, thanks for coming on to the show. It's great to see you. Great to have you. You're going to be a guest of ours at Colorado Festival of Horror, right?
Yep, I will be there.
Excellent. Well, we'll be able to see you in person, not just online.
Right.
Nice. And thanks for popping on too after such a long drive as well.
Yeah. I was out of town this weekend. Actually, I did a screening of one of my movies in Wisconsin. So it was like a 7-hour drive where we were going, and we came back today. And I made a point I had to zip back today to make sure we could jump on this. But I'm good. I'm a little little road hypnosis going on, but I'm fine.
Right. Oh, well, thank you. We greatly appreciate it. Christopher, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How you grew up and how you became a filmmaker?
Sure. So I usually just start this by saying, I make what I call new, old, good, bad movies, right? Which are sort of cheesy monster movies made up to look like sort of bad drive-in movies of the 50s and 60s. But I make them now, so they're new. So they're new, old, good, bad movies. Movies so bad they're good. It makes sense if you think about it, right?
Yeah, right.
So I started doing this in the first movie I made was called The Monster Phantom Lake. And I released that in 2006. And it was just something I just always really wanted to make movies. I grew up sort of around the movies. I loved going to the movies. I loved drive-ins, I saw a lot of great movies at the drive-in, and I grew up in mostly in the 80s. So it was like there were a lot of cool places to go see movies, and the drive-ins were still around, but they were kind of dying, right? So there's a lot of crappy drive-ins around where I was that were just kind of falling apart. But there was part of the fun of them was that they were kind of being run into the ground because it was clear that the urban sprawl was going to shut them down. So you end up with these sort of questionable drive-ins showing great movies all the time for super cheap. So we go all the time when I was a kid and was a teenager. And so it was kind of my thing. And I grew up around cheesy movies because my dad was a huge fan of cheesy movies from back when he was a kid in the 40s and 50s. And so he introduced me to all these movies. And I really wanted to make a movie for literally as long as I could remember. And in 2006, I finally did it. And I made a cheesy 1950s style B movie, figuring, if it was bad, it was probably going to end up being better than it would have been if it was just kind of like an okay indie movie. Because, right. I mean, if that makes sense, it's
right. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, if I make mistakes in this particular genre, they'll just be seen as,
part of it.
Yeah, it's like it's charm, and that's what I was going for, and it just worked out. The Monster Phantom Lake did really, really well, so I made another one, and then another one, and now it's 15 years here, and I keep making them, and in the process, I ended up creating this like shared universe of my movies. Right, I did the Marvel shared universe thing before they did. I beat them by 2 years. Damn it.
Yeah.
Well, and so I now have 16 released films, with 17th being made, and we have a holiday special we're working on, and
Oh,
and
cool.
it's what I do.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, you could say that the MCU, has a shared universe, and you beat them by 2 years. But nostalgically, you beat them by what, 50, 60 years.
60, 70 years. Yeah. I mean, I was way ahead of the curve before I was even born.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. Yeah. This morning I mentioned. I mentioned that this morning I watched the giant spider, and it's so charming and so sweet and so cool. Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That one came out in 2013.
Yep.
Is that?
Yep. That was movie 8.
Nice. That's awesome. And you involved your whole family and
Yep.
the community at large. And
Pretty much everyone I know, I've sucked them into this movie making thing
nice.
at some point. It's like if I know someone who's really good at woodworking, I'll have them build something. They'll help me with sets or whatever. It's basically everyone I know, sort of who ends up in my orbit. I put them to work. And a lot of folks, they come to me and they want to do stuff. They want to act in films. There's an actor I've used in a lot of movies that just approached me. His name's James Norgard. He's been in a bunch of my movies. He's really fun to work with, and he's a good friend now. But he literally came to one of the premieres of one of my movies and was like, "Put me in a movie. Here's my resume." I was like, "Okay," and I put him in the next one just because his enthusiasm was honestly enough. Not that he's not a good actor. He is, and that's why he ends up being in so many of them. But sometimes with these kinds of movies, enthusiasm sometimes, trumps talent even. It's just like, if you want to be in this and you really want to put your time and effort into it, you want to go out and, help me promote them and keep the whole thing alive. I'm often just like, sure, what do you want to do? You want to be in a movie? You want to get eaten by a giant spider? I can do that.
Yeah.
And I learned early on, it's like when people offer things, I mentioned really early, right at the beginning, that I'm from Minnesota. I'm from the upper Midwest, right? When people offer things, it's sort of expected that you say, no, I got it. It's fine. You don't need to do that. Very early on, I stopped doing that. I had to overcome my innate, learned behaviors. So when someone said, hey, can I do something for you? I'm like, yes, you can. And it's just like, I'm not going to fight you on it. If you said you want to do it, I had people come up like, I have this old house. I'd love for you to shoot a movie in there. Okay. I hope you know what you're getting into, because I'm going to do it. And I did.
That's awesome. That's a great way to be. Kind of skirt, that localized, politeness, and get some things done. But the neat thing too is the whole community, gets involved, and now they got a cool story.
Right. And that's the thing, is like I come across a lot of people, and I literally, there was one, speaking of the giant spider, there was one actor in it who was just like the cashier at the local Target, right? Who like, I go to the same Target over and over again, and you start talking to the same cashiers, you notice over, multiple visits, and we'd gotten to talking, and she'd asked what I did for, a living. I mean, this isn't what I do necessarily for a living, but it was like, I ended up, hey, I make movies, it was an opening. And so I told her all about it. She's like, oh, I would love to be in a movie sometime. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm shooting this one. Dress this way and show up here, and I'll put you in it. And she was like, okay. It's just like that. It was like, okay. And so she's in the giant spider.
That's so cool. Yeah. For those that aren't aware, here's a still of, from the giant spider film. Can you explain to us, the process of using the family tarantula?
Well, the fun thing about the tarantula, right? My son, Elliot, who's actually been in several of my movies, has always been a kid who likes having sort of exotic pets. Right. And he had this gecko that sadly passed away. And he was very distraught. And he said, I want to get something else now to replace it. And I was like, well, what do you want? He's like, I don't know. Let's go to the pet store and we'll figure it out. So we went to a pet store, and he saw the tarantula, and he said, "I want a tarantula." And I said, in the back of my head, I was like, "I'm going to buy you a tarantula because that's the star of my next movie right there."
Yeah.
So we bought a tarantula, and I brought it home, and didn't talk to the wife first. But you know what? She was on board.
Okay.
She's in a bunch of the movies. She's fine. But we brought home the tarantula, and I immediately started thinking about how to make this giant spider movie. Even though the idea for the giant spider movie goes back to the very beginning. In fact, the first movie I mentioned I made called the Monster Phantom Lake. I did a news article, like a news interview for a newspaper. And they asked me, now that you've done this movie, do you have any other ideas for other movies? And I mentioned I wanted to make a giant spider movie.
Yeah.
So that was kind of in the back of my head for a long time. But it took like 7 more years before I could, I think, get good enough as a filmmaker to make something like the giant spider, which is a much larger sort of epic by comparison to the Monster Phantom Lake. A smaller cast, it's just a smaller scale story, right?
Yeah.
But you do a giant spider movie, you got to do, the army has to be involved. There has to be a drive-in. There has to be all these things to really make it work. You can't make a small giant spider movie. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you were to just, maybe the giant spider is, claustrophobic and he exists in one room.
Right, in one room, and there's just like some guy trapped in the corner, and he's trying to stay really still so the spider doesn't get him. Or maybe it's just like a family stuck in a house, and the giant spider is lurking around outside, and they're like, "Well, how do we, go save the family goat or whatever?" I don't know.
There you go.
But it's just not as exciting. It's just not as exciting as a giant spider attacking a whole county, right? I mean, it's just it had to be the biggest thing I'd ever done, and to date, it still is.
Yeah, there's a lot of set pieces, a lot of locations. It seems like every edit on there is to a different location altogether.
Oh yeah. It's probably the biggest cast I've ever had. The biggest, probably the largest number of locations. And I mentioned how when people offer something, they say, "Well, hey, I have this house or this thing. You want to shoot there?" I shot at 2 drive-ins in that movie. And I sort of stitched them together cinematically to make one drive-in. So I shot like the exteriors leading into at one, and then the interiors at another. And both the owners of those drive-ins have shown my movies before, and both had said, "I would love for you to shoot something here, something." So I took them both up on it. I was like, "Okay, well, I have this idea for this giant spider movie, and the giant spider attacks the drive-in. What do you say?" And they were all for it. And they actually helped us procure classic cars and people, extras who drove the classic cars and, run away from the monster and stuff. So they really helped out.
Yeah, that can't be, very easy, juggling all those elements, plus also doing a period piece too.
Right. Yeah, you kind of have to fight with a little bit. The period piece part can get, you can be a slave to the authenticity of it and just be like, that person cannot be in it because their beard looks wrong or whatever. And I realized after maybe 2 or 3 movies that it just doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be that perfect, as long as the general feeling and look and sound of it is of that era. It's going to be what it is. You're making it now. It's never going to be perfect. I'm not Spielberg. I can't spend millions of dollars on it. I have $5,000 to spend, and I have to spend it wisely. So if, one of the actors is a guy and he's got pierced ears and he doesn't have anything in, but you can kind of see the holes. Oh, well, it is what it is. Hopefully the rest of the movie will kind of carry it, I have an actor that I've used in a couple movies. He's got pierced ears, which is a very modern thing and no one cares. But, in the 50s, that's not exactly something a lot of guys did. And you can see it in some shots, but I don't care that much because the movie itself is entertaining and fun and gives enough of the impression of what we're going for that I'm not going to be that insane about it.
Right. That at the same time too, like those limitations, that brings about so much, innovation. It's like, how do you do those creative problem solves? It's like, okay, this clearly isn't 1950s authentic, but it's like, how can we shoot it to kind of cheat it? you know?
Yeah, and you just sort of do your best, you know. I mean, um, that's the one thing about that era too, is you think about movies now and they have all this money to spend on CGI where they can create anything and everything you can think of, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things that's awesome about especially the 50s and the early 60s is that like special effects and all that stuff was really just more or less really coming into its own, right?
Right.
They were, a lot of these people were just making stuff up as they went. You had someone like Bird Eye Gordon, who was a lot of his movies usually had like oversized elements, right?
Yep.
Like he did Earth versus the Spider,
Yep.
uh, and he was a special effects guy. So they were just kind of figuring out how to make it work.
Right.
Whereas now, you just plug it into a computer and get a really good artist, and look, it's a realistic spider. So
Mhm.
back then, they just kind of had to figure it out. And I find there's some sort of like parallels to being someone like myself who only has like I said, like $5,000 to play with to make a
Right.
feature film. Obviously, I'm saving a lot of money by being able to shoot digitally and edit digitally, and I
Mhm.
own my own camera and all that kind of stuff. But then it's a trade off of like, well, what can we manage for only $5,000? I can't pay someone to do a really high end CG creature, but I don't know that I would want to. How about
Right.
instead I get my friend Mitch Gonzalez to create a mask for a monster? It's going to be more authentic anyway, but then it's going to be something real. Which those
Yes.
movies, everything was real.
Yeah.
You use miniatures and masks and things that were there, and
Yeah.
and and so it's fun to play in that sort of that world.
But and then the actors have something tangible to
Right,
react from, you know?
right, and
Yeah.
it becomes a nice challenge too because. Um, Whereas modern movies, it's like they're running away from stuff they can't see. So that's its own very specific challenge of just like, I have to have a really good imagination. What is this thing and why is it scaring me and how do I react? The inverse of that is people in my films who see the monsters made out of garbage bags, um, and they still have to act like they're going to die. So it
Right.
becomes a fun little acting challenge of like, okay, well, how do I give it my all while not laughing? I mean, um, a lot of those old movies, actors in those old movies tended, we look back at them now and it's a very specific type of acting, and actors often think, oh, I'm going to be super wooden. And, it's like, no, no, no. I always tell people, don't do that. You have to
Yeah.
realize back then they were trying to make scary movies. They may
Right.
have failed, spectacularly in the process, but that spectacular failure is the thing we love about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the authenticity. That's the charm, is that they're really trying to make this, floating brain on a string seem really scary. And the
Right.
actors are giving it their all, even though you're looking at it and you're like, dude, it's a plastic brain on a string.
Right.
But they're in it. And so that's fun as a director, but even as an actor, to be like, how do you get people to act honestly, as if in this world that pile of that garbage bag monster is going to kill them, right? And they have
Right.
to act that way, and that adds, I think, to that what I'm going for and some of the authenticity of what I do,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
at least what I'm attempting to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, no matter what the project is, everybody's invested. They've got to be in it. They've got to, and if they're not in it, it's going to show.
Right? Exactly.
So even if like the effects or whatever logistics they're working with just don't pay off, at least you still feel the heart of it.
Right. It's like we're really trying. We
Yeah.
really are.
Right.
And sometimes, sometimes I find that the actors that show up in multiple of movies of mine aren't always necessarily the greatest actors in the world, but they always give it everything they have.
Yeah.
And my stepson always plays the monsters, right? And he
Oh,
has
cool.
since he was like 16,
Nice.
and he's in his 30s now. And I mean, he's always my monster, and he loves being in the costumes, and he does a great job as the monster. But he's not always the most interested in being outside of the costumes. But I make him do it, right? I put him on screen. And he's the first to do it. He's like, I'm not the best actor. And I'm like, but you try really hard.
Right.
And people love that because they can tell that despite the fact that you're a better monster than an actor. And he, like I said, he's the first to admit it. I'm not slamming him. People love him because he feels like, like an actor you'd see in like an Ed Wood film, who's obviously trying really hard, really hard.
Yeah.
And just giving it their best. And sometimes there's beauty in that. As opposed to someone who's absolutely at the top of their game. There's beauty in that too, but it's not the same, as if someone at that level is coming sort of down to what we do. It seems weird or off or something. I don't know. Although that's kind of fun too, when you have a really good actor, and I have several of those, really put in a great performance in a movie that is clearly, meant to be cheesy.
Yeah. But that's that's always fun, seeing like A-list celebrities, actors that pop up in some of these like genre films. Like one that comes to mind is like going back to like something like John Waters, Cecil B. Demented, and seeing Melanie Griffith, in something like that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember her from Working Girl, and she's in this, and it's this fun schlocky type film. And it's ended up being my favorite movie of hers.
Or basically everything Nicolas Cage does now.
Yes.
I mean, he was top of, he was sort of a somebody, Moonstruck, all that stuff. He was somebody, and then he kind of, but now it seems like he just does whatever the hell he wants, and it's brilliant. Sometimes it's terrible, but he always sort of gives everything to it, right? And it doesn't matter how ridiculous or stupid or bad the movie may end up being. You can tell he's just like, screw it, I'm going to do what I want. And there's some serious beauty in that. Seeing someone with clear defined talent just be like, I'm going to make a movie about, Chuck E. Cheese that kills people, basically. Stuff like that, where it's like, okay. And he has no lines in that entire movie. Was it Willy's Wonderland? He has no lines in that movie.
Right.
And yet he's like Nicolas Cage, no lines, and yet his performance is so bonkers and so fun and so strange.
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah.
That it's just like, all right, cool. Do you, man. I love it. I want to see if I can get him one of my movies at this point.
Oh yeah. I did interview a couple of weeks ago a film director that they were talking to Nicolas Cage. He ended up passing on the project because he's like, I'm going to step away from horror for a little bit, and I'm going to try and do something else. So
I'll get him on the rebound. I'll get him on the rebound when he comes back.
There you go. Giant Spider 2.
Heck yeah. That would be amazing. I'm serious. That would just be, and I feel like that'd be something he'd be like, sure, why not?
Right.
Him and Bill Murray, right? Two just like people who just do whatever the hell they want. And I love it. I would love to have those guys in the movie.
Yeah, that'd be so much fun. The other thing too is like watching like and I keep going back to Giant Spider because that's the most recent thing I've seen of yours. Is you've got your family and your friends and the community participating in the creation, but are they also like when it's done, do you get to show it at your local theater, the drive-in? Everybody comes out, the whole neighborhood and everything. The Giant Spider is always kind of the one that I feel like it was probably one of the highest peaks of what I do, right? There's so many people in it, and like I feel like everybody who has worked on that movie was just there's just something magical about making that movie, and everyone involved was really in it, and everything came together, right? I often say, as a filmmaker and as a writer, I write something and I film it, and then I edit it, and then I have to come to terms with what it ended up as, right? Compared to how I saw it in my head from the beginning to the end of like, okay, well, maybe this didn't work so well, that didn't work so well, I guess this is what it is. And you kind of have to just step back and accept it for what it is. The Giant Spider was probably the first movie that I think turned out better than I saw it in my head. That in the end, when I finally saw it, I was like, man, this is actually
this is good. Wow, this is, it's like some of the special effects were really I mean, some of them, here's the thing, we even shot a lot of those special effects like backwards.
Mhm.
You should usually film like the monster, the spider first, and then work the human stuff around the spider footage you have,
Yeah.
because the spider, you can't tell it what to do. You get what you get, and then you're like, well, I can tell the actors how to,
How
this is
to,
what it looked
yeah.
like. So
Yeah.
and I did it the other way around. I shot all the human stuff and then the spider stuff. And the fact that I got so much spider stuff that actually matched and worked,
Yeah.
um, is kind of amazing to me that it turned out just as good as it did. But so, we always do like a world premiere, which, with the pandemic over the last year, we weren't able to do, which was kind of weird because we did one every single year since 2006.
Right.
But we always do like a big premiere that, almost as all of them have sold out. The Giant Spider sold out in like less than 2 weeks, I think, which was
Nice.
the fastest we ever. It was just like, we opened it up and we had 3/4 of the theater full within a day. And then it
Nice.
was just like, we were down to the point where I was just like, there are 5 tickets left. We'd sell 2 at that moment, and just, it came
Yeah.
down to, I think I ended up even overselling it a little bit, just knowing that some people might not be able to make it. And I was prepared to, give refunds or whatever, but it was insane. And then those drive-ins that we shot at, they've both shown it multiple times, because it's like, hey, come to see the drive-in, the giant spider attack.
Right.
And like I said, this past weekend, I was actually at a theater in small town Wisconsin, showing one of my films, and I've been going back there every year, every summer, just to show something, whatever new movie I have. And you just have an audience of local folks who always come out that I know by name now, that just having done it so much. And
Nice.
they my movies are all crowdfunded, so at that point it's like I do this thing and I see a handful of the same people every time, and they sort of re-up with the next movie and throw $20 at me to help make the new movie. And every year I come back, they get their DVD and their little certificate saying they contributed to the movie, and they give me $20 for the next one.
That's
So
cool.
it's like, over time I've sort of built up a nice just fan base that has been really generous, particularly with everything that happened in the last year and a half, extra generous, just to sort of help keep it alive during, such weird times.
Well, and I think too, I get the sense that it just means so much to people to participate in your art. I mean, it's, what a great, community project to really, to create a film. It's like,
I really do think that community theater is sort of the best way to look at my films and the sort of universe of my movies. Because a lot of if you see like more than one of my movies, you start recognizing people, you start recognizing behind the scenes names, you start, you start realizing that this is more like a community theater troupe than it is, just one guy grabbing random people to be in a movie. It's like, usually if a person ends up in one of my movies, they're going to be in at least 2 or 3 more. I mean, almost every single person. I'll find a place for them as long as they want to be in it. And we're not, fighting, which, that's happened. But that's creative people. What can you do?
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Now, I love this headshot. We talked a little bit about this before we went live. But this is, as you put it, your Jim Henson shot.
Right. I was doing a convention down in Dallas, and I had just a headshot, and I realized that if you were walking past my little table in the dealer's area, the vendor room, you wouldn't necessarily know what it is I did, because it was just like a shot of me, and I'm nobody. No one sees me, and it's like, oh my God, it's that guy. I'm not recognizable, right? And I thought, I need something that's just going to be like someone sees it across the room, and an image that grabs them and is just like, what is it with this guy surrounded by all these, what is this, just to grab people that beyond my dumb face. And then I thought back to Jim Henson, because I grew up with the Muppets, and I love the Muppets and puppetry and all that stuff. I think that's the same thing with making sort of cheesy movies. It's along the same vein to a certain extent. There's something just real about the Muppets. And there's a lot of great shots of Jim Henson surrounded by the Muppets. And I was like, man, I should just get a photo like that taken of me surrounded by my creatures, basically.
Right.
So that you see this image and you're like, okay, why is that guy surrounded by weird monsters I don't recognize? I want to know more, you know? And so I know this great local photographer named Christy Williams, who's actually been in a few of my movies.
Cool.
And I asked her if she would do basically a photo shoot where I bring in a bunch of my monsters, costumes and people to put them on. And we could take a Jim Henson style photo. And I sent her examples. She's like, we're doing it. Let's do it.
Nice.
So it was like basically me surrounded by my kids, my wife and kids, and like a mannequin wearing one of them. But it's mostly like just my family, all in costumes, and then me.
Oh, cool. Yeah, this is so much fun. Yeah, have you ever considered doing something with an obvious puppet or a Muppet type?
Well, funny you should mention it. In 2015, the little guy on my shoulder, that guy's name is Steve. In 2015, I did a movie called Danny Johnson Saves the World. It was movie number 10, and my son Elliot, who I mentioned already, was 12 at the time, and he had played that character in a few movies, because again, it's that shared universe thing, and he'd been this sort of like local kid in this Phantom Lake County, as we call it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what, I should do a movie where he's the star. That's kind of like a kid's movie, right? Oh, I thought, you know what, I should do basically a B movie, 1950s Muppet movie, with him as the star, and like him and his siblings and friends. And I wrote it, and it became a thing. And we figured out how to make puppets, and we did this whole thing where it's just basically like most of the story involves Danny Johnson as an old man telling his grandkids stories of when he saved the world. And so you're not sure how much of it is true and how much of it isn't. And we just had a really good time making it. And it was just kind of, I wanted to do a movie with my kids because I hadn't done one with just my kids at that point. And it's one of the more popular ones, to the point that, like, if you buy the DVD of The Giant Spider, it has Danny Johnson Saves the World on it. So it's like a two for one DVD. And it's proven, like I said, to be really popular. And that little Steve guy on my shoulder is like one of the more popular characters I've ever created, just because he's adorable and he's a puppet, and everyone loves, Kermit the Frog. And that was what I was kind of going for. And then that kind of morphed into the movie we just released, which is called The Phantom Lake Kids and the Beast Walks Among Us, which is, those 5 kids there are all from the Danny Johnson Saves the World. And they end up being kind of like the Phantom Lake County's Scooby-Doo gang. That's awesome. And so we ended up taking those characters, and they're all 5 years older now, and just doing sort of something different and doing a little bit of a Scooby-Doo thing. And then we were originally going to release that movie, The Beast Walks Among Us, last year, but it got shut down when everything got shut down. Right. And so, because my kids all live with me, we did another Phantom Lake Kids movie called The Phantom Lake Kids and the Unseen Invasion, which was basically our quarantine movie, where we shot a movie with them fighting off invisible aliens in their house. And so it's become like a trilogy, and it wasn't even intended to be. It just situation being what it was, that's what we ended up with. Wow, that's pretty, and that's pretty inventive. Taking those limitations and doing the best out of them. Well, and that's the way I've approached movie making from the beginning, is like always sort of going with the mindset that I have very little to work with. What can I do? What can I push with what can I make out of nothing? And I mean, the Monster Phantom Lake was made for realistically probably $800, and it's still one of my most popular films. Because we ended up just using lots of friends and family, and the monster costume cost us like $35 in dollar store stuff. And then we shot all outside and at a lake in a public area, and it's a very straightforward 50s teenagers in the woods, monster attacking them kind of thing. And we were able to make it for very, very little. I think it cost, back then we ended up shooting it using digital tape. So I think the biggest expense we had was just buying digital tapes, you know, whereas
Yep.
now it's all SD cards that you just reload every time.
Yeah.
And so that was like the biggest expense we had. And so from the beginning, that's the way I've always approached it. So with the Giant Spider in particular, that was the most expensive movie ever made, and it cost like $8,000. You know, which is not saying a lot, but I feel like you can see every penny on the screen.
Right.
And even then, I think there are times where it looks like it cost a lot more.
Yeah, I loved it. I just, you know, thought, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, just kind of harkens to that bygone era. And it's such a wonderful homage, but also you know, like what you said earlier, it feels like such a great, you know, community theater, you know, piece where everybody had a great time making this piece of art.
Well, and everybody was so cool, and they just chipped in their time, and like all the we used a bunch of classic cars, and every single person there, you know, it's not, we didn't have to pay anybody to bring their classic car. You know, you learn very quickly that people who own classic cars love when people look at their classic cars.
Right.
And so they were all just really excited by the possibility of getting their classic cars in a retro monster movie. I mean, if you own a 1956 Bel Air, I mean, chances are you want people to look at it, but how much cooler is that it's immortalized in a Giant Spider movie, you know? And so, you know, a lot of people were just willing to just donate their time and efforts and whatever they had to make it possible. I mean, even the drive-in owners were like feeding people when they didn't have to, but they're just like, hey, we got hot dogs and chips. Who wants it? You know, and they're just feeding everybody, and you know, never asked me for anything. They were just super cool.
Oh my God, that sounds absolutely amazing. You know, I wish, you know, more communities, you know, would participate in stuff like that. Really, I think you know, we just need more Christopher Mims to really spearhead those efforts.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm obviously one of a kind to a certain extent, but but no, I know what you mean. I've always approached movie making not from you know, I think early on I had sort of the bug of like, I'm going to make a movie and then Hollywood's going to come knocking and I'm going to be rich by the end of the year. And they're going to be like, hey, you want to make a Star Wars movie, kid? You know, and then after making a few, I'm like, you know, that's not what I'm going for. That has never been really the way I want to go. For me, it was always like, you know what? I just want to continue being able to make movies and have a good time doing it. And, you know, I absolutely love when I finish a film and we do the premiere and you're at that premiere. I don't watch the movie at that point. I've seen it 400 times, right? I'm watching people just enjoy it, and I'm watching people who, for the first time, are seeing their faces on the screen, and you just that sort of joy of that moment is exactly why I do it. So I mean, this last year and a half has been really difficult because we haven't been able to do that. So this last weekend, being able to show a movie and you know, hear people laugh at it and have a good time, I was like, oh, I miss that so much. I just miss going to the movies, but being able to, like, you know, sort of share my movies with a crowd of people who just like, you know, just enjoy what I do. And a lot of these folks, you know, like I said, contributed. You know, I was talking about maybe shooting something at that theater I'm always at. And immediately when I said that, like half the people were like, I want to be in it. I want to be in the theater. I just want to be like an extra sitting in the theater. And I'm like, okay, well, I got my extras, you know? And it's just so many, I mean, who doesn't want to be in a movie? Who doesn't want to be, I mean, 90% of them are like, I want to be killed horrifically by something in a movie. You know, that's what everybody wants. And it's like, well, maybe I can help you out with that.
Nice. That's so much fun. Now, you know, I found this image of Queen of the Snakes. Can you talk a little bit about that project? Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry about that.
No, I could barely hear it.
Ghostwriter. Maybe it's Nicolas Cage.
It's right. He's stopping by. He's like, man, I heard someone wanted me putting him in a movie.
Yeah, that's right. Certain Mim will sign it up.
So in 2018, I ended up writing 2 scripts. Partially because one that I actually did end up making. I didn't know at the time if I could get it shot. Because I wanted to make this movie called Guns of the Apocalypse, which is I call it a post-apocalyptic spaghetti Midwestern. So it's like it's a spaghetti Western, but set in the Midwest. And you know, it was a little grander in scope. And I didn't know necessarily if it was going to come together. I had a lot of pieces in place, but I was getting a little nervous that it wasn't going to happen. So I started writing this other movie, Queen of Snakes, which is a smaller movie, but it had been an idea that had sort of floated around my head for quite a while. And so I had some sort of downtime around the sort of Christmas holiday. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to write Queen of Snakes, and I'm going to write it as fast as I possibly can, just to do it as sort of like a true B movie. I got, you know, how fast can I write a script? And so I did. I wrote Queen of Snakes in like 4 days.
Wow.
And I was feeding pages of it to my wife, who actually ultimately ended up playing the Queen of Snakes because she's an actor and involved in making the movies.
Sweet.
And she's like, I really like this. Keep going. And so I ended up just putting it together, like I said, in 4 days. And she's like, are we making this? And I was like, sure, I guess. So we ended up shooting Queen of Snakes at the same time we were shooting Guns of the Apocalypse. Basically, we shot all the Guns of the Apocalypse stuff on the weekends. And then 1 or 2 nights during the week, we would shoot Queen of Snakes. Because it's, like I said, it's a much smaller story. So it only required 2, 3, 4 actors at a time. And so we'd shoot that on like Wednesday. And then on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'd shoot Guns of the Apocalypse because it's a Western. There's a lot of extras. You got guns. You got all these things that, you know, you don't have to worry about when you have what ends up being kind of a family psychodrama with a monster involved, you know, which you could just sort of do during the week. So we ended up shooting it all at the same time. And I edited, I was focusing more on Guns of the Apocalypse as sort of like the A picture. And so I edited that together and released that first, and then 6 months later released Queen of Snakes. And you know, it was fun to do sort of 2 completely different movies at once. And one of them, you know, Guns of the Apocalypse, I shot during the winter here in Minnesota, which I'm a lifelong Minnesotan, and I have no idea why I decided to do that, because it was so cold and so awful. And I'm like, it's like, I know what the winters are like. Why am I doing this to myself? But it turned out really great. Whereas the other one was shot all inside. But I was also, my wife is not, the character she's playing in it, the Queen of Snakes, the sort of human version of the Queen of Snakes, who then, she gets an amulet that gives her the power of the Queen of Snakes, and she turns into the Queen of Snakes, and she gets all these powers and stuff. My wife is actually like a really sweet person, and the character she's playing is really awful, right? And she was kind of struggling with like being that awful. And I'm like, you have to be believable. And she's like, I don't understand what you want me to do. So I started Kubricking her a little bit.
Ooh, okay.
I was just kind of like, I turned up the heat to make everybody uncomfortable and like all these things just to be like, so everyone's all cranky and it's really coming out. And I'm like, I love this, but I hope, you know, I think the wife's going to leave me after this. She didn't, but
sleep on the couch.
Right, exactly. But the performance comes out. She did a great job. So it was like, I guess it was worth it, you know, getting her pissed off. She knows I'm evil, I guess, but that's, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, it's for your art. She's like, fine. It's a good movie. Fine.
Now having, you know, looking back, because that was just a couple of years ago, right? You know, can she appreciate it? Yeah, a little bit more now.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, it wasn't entirely unpleasant. It was just there were some scenes where it's like I really needed her to really just
amp it up,
be cranky and be over the top. And so it was like I was you know, I was sort of riding her, being just like, you know, no, do it again. She's like, you know, it's like, I don't care if you want to kill me, just channel that rage into the character. You can do it. And it comes through. So it ended up, you know, I like it a lot. It's very different. And it's one of those ones. My movies are weird. Like The Giant Spider tends to be the one everybody likes, right? It's as I always tell people, it's the only movie I've ever made I don't have to explain. You know, it's like, I'll tell you the title, you know what it's about.
Right.
The other ones I have to get into it a little bit. Queen of Snakes is one of those interesting ones where people either kind of hate it or they seem to love it. It's like, I think it's more authentic than a lot of the other ones in just like the pacing and the mood and the over the topness of the melodrama, which was what I was really going for. It's sort of like a psychodrama of just like, you know, really over the top. And I think it plays really well. Some people don't like that. If you don't like sort of those old movies, sometimes that comes off as wrong or something, because it's a very retro style. They don't do it anymore. There's not a lot of melodrama, like over the top melodrama anymore.
Yeah.
But a lot of those movies back, and especially the early 60s, there was a lot of that. And I was just like, I want to do that. I want to do something that's just ridiculous and is played as just so dramatic to the point that it becomes kind of laughable. And that's what I was going for. I think we did it. I really did.
No, it's the giant spider is absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see more of your work, because I think it's incredibly unique in this day and age. Even though it's, like I said, it kind of harkens to a bygone era of filmmaking, but it's
insane, is what it is. It's just pure craziness. I mean, I've made 16 movies and only one is in color. I mean, that tells you a lot about my crazy mindset. But that's the thing, is like, I feel like, there's room for everything in film. And I love that era of movies. I love everything about it. And having sort of seen everything from that era, one of the things I was like, what, I'd love to just make more. I'd love to have more of it. And I strive for authenticity. It's never perfect. And there's modern stuff that creeps in, and it's not necessarily worth it to me to put that much time and effort into making it perfect. To be, totally indistinguishable. But I have had people on like Amazon leave scathing reviews, because like one guy's like, one of my favorite reviews ever was like, he's like, I watched this for 5 minutes and I realized this is a scam. They said it was made in 2017, but it was clearly made in the 50s. And it was like,
that's great.
I fooled him. It was like, okay, I win. I mean, you may hate it, but I did exactly what I wanted to do, was make you think it was from back then.
That is awesome. I think I was in high school when this movie came out, but you remember the movie Matinee with John Goodman?
Oh yeah.
Seeing that kid go to the movies and have those experiences that he did at that age, I kind of had a similar experience just watching your giant spider.
Well, and I love Matinee, and Joe Dante, who made that, is a huge old school monster movie fan. I mean, Gremlins and stuff. Right. A little bit of that movie is a bit of the tip of the hat to William Castle, right? Who was like the gimmick guy back in the days. Back in the day, he was the guy who wired up seats to Joy Buzz people, for the Tingler, And I actually made a movie that was my tribute to him, which is called House of Ghosts, which was basically a tribute to all the films of William Castle. It had like a dumb gimmick and stuff, the whole thing. And in fact, I still usually, around Halloween end up doing screenings of it, where we do like a full live show that goes along with it. That's sort of like in Matinee, where they had the guy in the mant suit running around the theater, stuff like that, where we have sort of live elements that come out to, steal your soul or whatever, and it's just goofy stuff like that, I love going to the movies. I love the act of going to the movies. And I think that a lot of what I loved about going to the movies when I was a kid, and the drive-in and all that stuff is really been sort of lost to these days. And so there's a part of me that really likes just, William Castle stories in particular, the weird crap he would do just to make, to get butts in seats, to get people to, and the stories of the stuff he did, like the Emergo thing with the House on Haunted Hill with the skeleton, the basically blow up skeleton that would float over the audience. And it's like you look back and you think, oh, I wonder if people were scared, but then you read stories like, no, people were just throwing popcorn at it and just having think it was funny and stupid, just like it is. And it's like, that's the kind of thing I want, is memorable experiences, right? Of something like that, where we had a whole thing where someone dressed up in a skeleton and walked around the theater for the premiere, and the evil ghost, angel of death, came out to try and scare someone away. I mean, it was ridiculous and fun, and that's that's the kind of thing that I love about that, is where going to the movies isn't always just about seeing a movie. Sometimes your enjoyment of a film is wrapped up in how you see it and where you see it and who's there and the reaction the crowd has to it. I saw Anaconda in the theater back in the 90s, and that movie's awful. It's really not good.
Yeah.
But the crowd that I saw it with was super loud and were like yelling at the screen, and it was the most fun I've had in a theater, because it became like a Mystery Science Theater thing. It's a Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing, and it was so fun. And I still bring it up because it was like, that made that movie so much better, even though the movie is not good.
Right. Yeah. It's great having those in-person experiences. Anything to really enhance, the movie going, experience. It kind of reminds me too of like Rocky Horror Picture Show. You have whole troops, they'll show the movie in the back and on the screen, but in the foreground they're performing the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, it becomes more than just a movie. It's more like a performance. I mean, I've seen Rocky Horror in theaters like at least 24 times in my life. And like the movie itself, if I were to have just seen the movie without actually experiencing it in a theater first, I would have been like, what the hell is this? Like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I get what they're going for, but I don't. But then you see it live, and it's like, it blows your mind. I mean, when I first, I was like, I don't know, maybe 14, and like friends and I like snuck out from a sleepover and went down to the theater in the sort of artsy part of town to see it. And it was like, it was mind blowing. Honestly, it was like, we didn't know what to make of it. And I was like, that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
I don't know how to process it as a 14-year-old, but it was so cool. And I was like, I have to go do that again. And of course, then you tell everybody in, school, oh, we went to Rocky Horror. Let me tell you, it's just like, that's the thing, is like stuff like that is to me what made, just go to the movies. I love going to the movies, and I absolutely miss it more than anything else.
Would you ever do a musical?
We actually have, believe it or not. So my first movie, The Monster Phantom Lake, in 2006, like I said, was pretty dang popular, right? And it's still, again, I'm constantly kind of selling out of it. I mean, it's the one people still like, and I think it's probably one of my more authentic ones, because when I made it, I didn't know what I was doing, so it became kind of this weird meta thing where it's like, I failed spectacularly, like I mentioned earlier. It's like, I didn't know what I was doing, but we tried so hard that charm that you sort of try to create happened naturally. So it's still popular. And sort of throughout the years of promoting it in different places, I met a guy named Adam Bowl, who is a very, very talented composer and musician. And he said, have you ever considered making that into a musical, kind of like Little Shop of Horrors? And I was like, not until you mentioned it, but now that you have, let's do it. And so over the years, we sort of went back and forth about it. And finally, for the 10th anniversary of the movie in 2016, we worked it out. We got it together, and he wrote a whole thing, and we did a crowdfunding campaign for it to get it together, and we recorded a cast album, and it was amazing. We did a short run of it, and I actually filmed it, the initial run of it. And then I edited it together, and it's available on DVD, and you can watch it on Amazon Prime and our Roku channel and stuff. And it's
nice.
Adam did an amazing job taking, a very low budget B movie and turning it into a very entertaining stage show. And it's difficult to do a lake in a stage show, but he made it work. I mean, it ends up being kind of like an actual community theater version of these weird community theater-esque movies we did. And the music is just, it's like, Adam is so dang talented, and he's a great lyricist, and he came up with these really funny songs. And one of the things I do with my movies is I try really hard to kind of pay homage to different types of tropes, right? So it's like, you had the Monster Phantom Lake, which is like kids being attacked by a monster in the woods, the classic cliche, right? Then you had the giant bug movie I did, and I did the William Castle movie, the haunted house movie. So I've done all these different types of movies. I did the the weird spaghetti western, which is also actually a post-apocalyptic movie. I did a zombie movie. It's like all these different types. One thing's Adam that took that same mindset when he was doing all the music, and every song then became a bit of a tribute to different musical theater composers, right? And
Cool.
so it's like it's I don't know, it's really entertaining and really well done. And we, he went overboard with it to the point that he has all the materials. Like if there's a theater out there that want to do it, he has all the materials they would need to do it. And even all the materials to do it, like it requires a 14-piece orchestra, but he's also made it so that he has, just the music available. So if you just want to do it from like a CD, you can do that. And it's just like he had everything put together, and we're just waiting for a theater that'd be willing to put it on. And the only thing we put in the contract to do it was like you can kind of do it more or less for free, because we're just trying to get someone to try and get it out there. Right. But you have to make sure that Adam and I have tickets to see it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we'll come to you to see it, but you got to make sure we get in free.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. I would love to see something like that. So anybody out there who has a theater who wants to put this on, get a hold of Christopher.
Yes. Just find me at saintuphoria.com, my website. You can find me there, or, on Facebook, on, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media.
Nice.
I sound old. All the social medias.
All of it.
We got the tweeters and the Twix and all that stuff. We got it all.
Yeah. The Snapchappers.
Yeah. The InstaChat and the Snapgram and all that good stuff.
Oh man. That's so cool. Christopher, it was great having you on and being able to chat with you and learn more about all the cool things that you do and you're working on.
I appreciate you having me. This is great. I can't wait to get to the event here in a month. It's going to be great fun.
Yeah, it'll be great seeing you in person at Colorado Festival of Horror. For everybody out there, go get your tickets at COFOHorror.com. It's September 10th through the 12th here in Denver, Colorado. And also visit Christopher's website, saintuphoria.com, for all your entertainment needs.
And I'll say real quick, if you can't remember Saint Euphoria, or you just don't know how to spell it, if you just go to thegiantspider.com, you'll get where you need to go.
There you go. Yeah, and it's also scrolling at the bottom, so in case nobody's paying attention.
So you have no excuses at this point. Just go.
Yeah, just do a screen grab of this image, and you're golden. So, that's so cool. Yeah, Christopher, if you can, just stick around for a few minutes after we sign off here. But I want to say thank you to Hellfire Entertainment for broadcasting us, and for Mutiny Information Cafe, our friends over there. If you're going to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated. And, of course, Groovy TV. Poor Groovy passed away last year, but we continue on in his spirit. And, to our friends at Alien Donut Films, thanks for, sponsoring us and broadcasting us. That's Bill and Angela over there. And then our producers, Stefan Santa Cruz and Amanda Armstrong. Thanks so much. And to everybody that tuned in tonight, thanks again for all your support. Be good, be kind, help each other out during these tough times. And remember, we love you. Have a good night. Take care.